Job chapter 22 is where we find ourselves this morning. And remind you about where we've come from. Chapters 1 and 2 give us the situation behind the situation. You know, there are situations behind the situation. Whatever situation you are facing right now, there's a situation behind the situation. And you may or may not be fully cognizant of what that situation behind the situation is. In Job's case, the situation was he lost everything. His health, his family, his possessions. The situation behind the situation was that God was bragging on Job and giving Job the opportunity to bring glory to God by his very suffering. By God being able to look in Satan's face and say, I told you he wouldn't curse me. I told you he wouldn't turn from me. And I know because I'm God. And so Job has no concept of this. He doesn't know that this is why things are going on. He doesn't have the insight to that. In the same way that situations you may be facing, you may find that I don't understand why this is going on. I thought God was going to make my life easy. And you're going, what's going on? I'm being good. I'm following you, Lord, in every way I know how. And yet, and then fill in the blank. And that's where Job was. Because he wasn't given insight into the situation behind the situation. Sometimes we are, sometimes we're not. So then you remember Job's 3 friends traveled from miles away to come and comfort him. And they sat with him for a week and in silence just sat with him and had empathy for him. And then they made their mistake by opening their mouth. Because they began to speak, and we saw in chapters 3 through 13, they started giving counsel without comfort. While they sat there with him in silence, they were comforting him just by being there. You know, sometimes when you go through something, you don't want somebody to come and tell you and explain to you what's going on or tell you how to fix it or anything else. You just want someone to be there with you. Someone to just be there. But they were coming to tell him what was going on and explain to him what the problem was. And all 3 of them, beginning with Eliphaz, who was probably the nicest of the 3, started talking about the fact that, well, you know, Job, God blesses people who are righteous, and people who are unrighteous, man, he gives them bad things in their life. And as you've probably noticed, there's some bad things going on in your life, Job. So, I don't mean to point fingers, but, well, his 2 buddies were quick to point fingers. Job, look, man, you must have done something really bad. Your kids must have done something really bad to go through this. And Job keeps responding to them saying, but no, it's not that I'm perfect, but I'm blameless in this. I have not done anything. I have been faithful to God, and therefore I don't see how all of this suffering is somehow in payment for my doing something wrong. So they went through. Each one of them said something, and Job responded. And then last week we went through the second cycle of dialogue between all 3 of them and basically saw comfort without listening. Counsel without listening. Here they were giving Job all sorts of counsel, but they weren't listening to what he was saying. To the point where 2 or 3 times he said, listen to what I'm saying. When you're bringing counsel to someone, listen to what they're saying. Because they're telling you something through what they say. So this morning we come to chapter 22. And we come to the last round of speaking with Job's friends. And actually one of them gives up talking to Job. Only 2 of them talk to him this time. And what they have to say is not much different from what they've said before. We begin with Eliphaz, the one who was, a little bit more understanding, a little bit gentler in the way he was saying to Job, theology, you should know that this is probably due to something you've done. And he begins by saying, do you think it's to God's advantage that you're righteous? Look at it. Chapter 22, verse 1, then Eliphaz the Temanite answered and said, can a man be profitable to God, though he who is wise may be profitable to himself? Hey, you're smart and it might be helping you. Do you think that's helping God at all by your smarts? Is it any pleasure to the Almighty that you are righteous? Or is it gain to him that you make your ways blameless? Is it because of your fear of him that he corrects you and enters into judgment with you? Hey, Job, you keep telling me you're righteous, you keep telling me you're blameless, so what? You think that's really helping God along? That's what he's saying there. These guys really know how to bring comfort. And then he comes right to verse 5. He says, is not your wickedness great and your iniquity without end? Now this is the guy God was bragging about how righteous he is. And here's this guy saying, your wickedness is really great. And then he goes on and starts accusing him of specific things. For you've taken pledges from your brother for no reason, and stripped the naked of their clothing. You've not given the weary water to drink, and you've withheld bread from the hungry. But the mighty man possessed the land, and the honorable man dwelt in it. Oh, you did all these things, but you were dwelling in the land. You were just fine, you mighty man. You have sent widows away empty, and the strength of the fatherless was crushed. Job, what have you been doing? Therefore, snares are all around you, and sudden fear troubles you. Darkness so that you cannot see, and an abundance of water covers you. You're getting what you deserve, Job. That's what he's saying. He's gone from being gentle about trying to correct Job to, man, he's just accusing him of things Job never did. Wow. And then in verse 21 he says, acquaint yourself with him, meaning with God, and be at peace. Be at peace. Receive, please, instruction from his mouth, and lay up words in your heart. If you return to the Almighty, you will be built up, and you will remove iniquity far from your tents. Now I got to tell you, like I said the first time we started listening to these guys, what he just said right there in those 3 verses, that's great stuff. That's great evangelism. Man, acquaint yourself with him and be at peace. You know, I didn't know who God was. Oh, I'd heard about him. And I'd sat through 8 years of parochial school. And I'd heard Bible stories. And I'd sat through 18 years of going to church faithfully on every Sunday morning because I had to. And I heard stories. And I understood the story of Jesus and the cross and the resurrection. I heard those things. I understood the words. But I didn't know God. And so as soon as I was no longer under the compulsion to sit and listen, I quit. And went on and chased the things that the world was offering at that time, which, interestingly enough, are not that much different than what the world offers today. It's got a different packaging. It's got a different look and feel to it, but it's the same thing. And I sought spirituality anywhere else but Christianity. And I got into some bizarre stuff. Transcendental meditation. Astral projection. It's real. It's real stuff. You're not making it up. It's real stuff. There are real spirits out there that you can get involved with. But they are not the spirit that loves you. I took what the world had to offer. And I found emptiness and found no peace until I finally heard about God as he really is. Instead of being the man still on the cross, the one who was resurrected and come to bring life and joy. And I got down on my knees in the living room of my home at the time. And I surrendered my life to God. And for the first time in my life, I found peace. I knew peace. Not everything suddenly got taken care of, and I was suddenly rich and all my bills were paid. I was still driving a 68 Chevy that the back end of it was so rusted out that you could see the beams when you opened the trunk. It was like it sat down permanently. Hey, I bought it for $75. What did I expect?